Welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Coming to you bright and early this morning after a very late game last night. We need to be done with these 9 p.m. Tip-offs. No more of those. I don't know if there's any more on the schedule, but really need to avoid that because it makes for a very late night. But we are here bright and early for you with the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's what we always ask you to do. It's what we hope you'll do. If you subscribe, you click the little subscribe button. It's right down there. You click that, you will make sure you never miss any of our exclusive Pitt video content right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You can turn on notifications, and you'll get an alert sent to your phone anytime we post a new video, or we go live for a live stream like we're going to do tonight at the Panther-Lair show at 8:30 p.m. like we do every Wednesday night, or when we go live for a post-game show. We're going to start working some basketball post-game shows in here coming up in the next couple weeks. Looking forward to doing that. We didn't do one after last night's game, but there were certainly plenty of things to talk about. But if we did a live stream last night, you would get an alert, a notification sent to your phone, so you would know that we were going live, so you wouldn't miss it. So make sure you do that. Subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com and like this video while you're here. We would very much appreciate it, just like I'm pretty sure you very much appreciated Pitt's efforts last night against number 11 Virginia. 68-65 win at the Petersen Events Center. Really, it should have been a 6-point game. 68-62. Virginia sank a 3 at the very end. Clock running out type of thing. I was particularly disappointed because I picked Pitt to win 70-64. So my 6-point spread would have been right on the money if I didn't get the exact numbers right. I at least had the spread. It ends up being a 3-point victory. Either way, Pitt will take it, and I'm pretty sure you will take it as well. Panthers improved to 11-4 overall, 4-0 in the ACC. Their first 4-0 start to conference play since their very first year in the ACC, way back in 2013-2014, when they won 4 games to open ACC play. And one of those wins was over Maryland. So you talk about how long ago it was, how long it's been since Pitt started 4-0 in conference play. One of their conference wins was against Maryland. It took me a little while to figure that out when I was reading through the box score and the game by game results from 2013-14 season, and I saw Maryland in there, and I said, well, this is only 3 ACC wins because they lost the next game. 2 games later they lost to Syracuse, and I was like, oh yeah, Maryland was one of the ACC teams at that point. And Pitt's 4-0 start that year with Jamie Dixon as head coach included a win over Maryland. Now they're 4-0 for the first time since then. They beat Virginia for the first time since 2017. It was the only other time they've ever beaten Virginia since joining the ACC. Their first regulation win against Virginia since 1974. There was some action going on last night at the Petersen Events Center. Some, I don't want to say history making or record breaking, but it was a big win for Pitt. In front of a crowd announced at 6,000, but it was a loud 6,000 by the end of that one. And as Pitt started pulling, well, I shouldn't say pulling away, but as they secured the win, that place got wild. It got loud, and it started to almost feel like the Petersen Events Center of old. I'm really curious to see what the crowd's going to look like on Saturday for this game against Clemson. We'll talk about that in a second. But this game last night, Pitt's, obviously third consecutive win over an ACC opponent. What really stands out to me, even though these last 3 wins, Syracuse, North Carolina, and Virginia, they each have been sort of unique in their own way. What has stood out to me in each of these games, whether it was Syracuse, where they get a 20-point lead and they blow that lead, but they hold on to win in the Dome, or whether it's North Carolina last Friday, where they really go toe-to-toe and blow for blow with a talented North Carolina team, play them down to the wire and pull out the victory at the end. Or this game last night, where they fall behind by 10 points at halftime. They're down 13 at one point in the first half. They have a 10-point deficit at halftime, and then they're down 12 in the second half with about 16 minutes to play, and they're able to go on a run and pull out the victory. And we'll talk about sort of the ins and outs of what happened during that run and how they fell into the hole and all that stuff. I mean, you watched the game, you know what happened. But what stands out to me from those 3 wins, and you could stretch it back even to some of the other wins they had in the non-conference, is we all talked in the offseason about how this would be Jeff Capel's oldest team, about how this was a team built around veteran players, veteran guards like Nike Sabandi, you see right there, Nelly Cummings, who you've seen, Jamarius Burton, Gray Elliott, these older players, these veteran guards, and these experienced players. And what's really stood out to me in these last few games, and really throughout this season as the team has grown together, is how that experience is coming into play. You could go into a situation like last night's game. You could be down 13 in the first half. You could be down 10 at halftime. You could be 12 in the second half. You still never actually really get out of the game. You don't quit. You don't back down. And I don't think it's hyperbole to say that Pitt teams of the last 4 years, probably the 2 years before that, don't battle back like that. They don't battle back from those kinds of deficits. They don't battle back when they fall behind like that. If last year's Pitt team, or the Pitt team from the 3 years before that, was down 12 to Virginia with 16 minutes to play in the second half, that's a loss. Probably a 20-point loss, maybe more. It's a loss. I think 9 times out of 10 they don't come back in that situation. But in previous years, they didn't have Nelly Cummings. They didn't have Jamarius Burton at his current level, his age, and his current level of maturity. Nike Sabandi playing the way he is now as a veteran guard out there. They didn't have that. They didn't have Blake Hinson. But this team does. And what this team also has, in addition to the experience and the veteran play, and experience is the best word for it. What they have in addition to experience is sort of this skill set, the way they put this team together, the way this team is built, with players who can do certain things, with players who have certain skills that I don't think previous Pitt teams had. This team is never truly out of a game because they can shoot themselves back into a game. This team is never truly out of a game because they have guards like, Burton, Cummings, and Sabandi who can pull them back into a game. This team is never truly out of a game because they have Blake Hinson who can catch an inbounds pass and just drain a three instantly. This team is never really out of a game because Greg Elliott, even if he didn't shoot well last night, he was 1 of 7 from the floor, and that one that he made was a 3. He was 1 of 7 from 3. He didn't take a single shot inside the arc. Although I think he did take a shot, but he got fouled on it, so maybe that doesn't count. But he's a really good shooter. He's a really good shooter. He's going to make shots. And so they're never really truly out of a game when they have players who can do what those 4 can do. 5, really, with Burton, Cummings, Sabandi, Hinson, and Elliott. They're never truly out of a game. And I think we saw that on display last night. It goes to 44-32. With 16 minutes to play. And what happens next is those guys I mentioned took over. Nike Sabandi hits a 3. Blake Hinson gets a defensive rebound. Gets fouled at the other end. Jamarius Burton drives. Kicks it into Federico, who makes a basket. Nelly Cummings drives for a basket. Jamarius Burton scores again. Nelly Cummings fights through contact for another basket. Blake Hinson hits a basket. And through those plays that I just described right there, that I just listed, that's a 14-0 run. And with strong play on defense, some timely rebounding, really efficient and tough play on offense, they end up turning a 44-32 deficit into a 46-44 lead. And as the game went on, Virginia eventually hit another basket. They hit 7 more, actually, after that point. Or 8, actually. Every time Virginia scored, Pitt had an answer. So Pitt went up 46-44. Virginia converts an and one, makes it 47-46. On the next possession, Nike Sabandi slams home a dunk that puts it back to 48-47. And that was the way it kind of went. Virginia made a couple baskets in a row. They hit a 3 to cut Pitt's lead to 51-50, and then they converted another and one and made it 53-51. At the other end of the basket, Elliott, that was actually the play I was thinking of, catches an inbounds pass, tries a shot, gets fouled, and ends up making 2 free throws. Now it's a tie game again at 53. Virginia scores to make it 55-53, and at the other end of the court, Federico puts it in, ties the game again, and then they end up pushing ahead. Blake Hinson hits a three, Federico gets a dish off a Greg Elliott drive, and he scores. Virginia makes a couple baskets, ties it up at 60. Federico comes through again on a dish from Nelly Cummings. They were just able to come up with an answer every time. And in the final 30 seconds, they got fouled 3 times. Cummings, Sabandi, and Burton got fouled once each, and they made all their free throws. They made 6 free throws in the final 28 seconds of the game just to put the thing away. This team has, again, there's the tangible and the intangible. The tangible is that they can shoot. The tangible is that they've got this experience. The tangible is they've got guards who can drive and they're tough to get to the basket. The tangible is they've got a big center who continues to develop, not even game to game or half to half, but possession to possession. He seems to keep getting better and better. And he's getting better at handling those dishes when he gets them from Nelly Cummings or Jamarius Burton or Nike Sabandi or Greg Elliott or whoever it is that drives into the paint and drops it off to him. They've got those tangible things, but they've also got those intangibles. They've got that veteran leadership. They've got what Jeff Capel keeps talking about, that they're a team that's very together, that they believe in each other. They believe in what they're doing and believe in what they're trying to do. He had a quote last night where he talked about there's no jealousy, there's no finger pointing. They all just support each other. They believe in each other. They like playing together. And it's kind of funny because that sounds very simple, but the reality is it seems to be having a huge impact on this team. And there were the things we talked about, there were a lot of things we talked about before the season. I talked a lot about how we haven't seen Jeff Capel have a team like this with veteran guards like this, a veteran backcourt like this. We haven't seen Jeff Capel have a team that could shoot like this one should be able to shoot. And we talked about that, and we said, so what I said was, I'm really curious to see how it comes together. We haven't seen him try this, so let's see if this approach works. This is very different from what the previous 4 years have been, so let's see how this approach goes. And the result has been really good. I think at this point, and look, I know that there's going to be a segment of the Pitt fan base that always says, hey, the collapse could come at any time. I fully understand that and appreciate that. And look, I think everyone's sort of waiting for that because the reality is they're going to lose another game. At halftime, I, like probably a lot of you, thought last night was going to be that loss. That first ACC loss, and they would have to face a new adversity. They'd have to learn how to bounce back from a conference loss. They've bounced back from a few losses already, but they would have to, they haven't done it in a little while. They have to show that they can. And I thought that was going to be last night. Instead, they just sort of keep rolling. You know what I mean? They just kind of keep humming along, and there'll be those losses, and we'll see how they respond to that adversity. But more and more, there's a lot to like about this team, because it's not just that they overcame a 10-point halftime deficit last night, or that they overcame a 12-point second half deficit last night. It's the team they did it against. And whether you want to say Virginia should have been ranked number 11 or not, I don't know. But I do know they had the number 1 defense in the ACC entering this game, statistically, points per game allowed, field goal percentage defense. And that's what you've come to expect from Virginia. They are very, very good at defense under Tony Bennett. They're a tough team to beat. They're a tough team for a good offensive team to beat. And I think Pitt is getting to the point of being a pretty good offensive team. But you saw in the first half how much of a challenge it can be to play against that style of defense. And what I thought was interesting is what Jeff Capel said after the game, that it's very hard to simulate it. You need to get a feel for it. You need to see what it's actually like to play against it. Well, a lot of teams I don't think are built to be able to afford to have a whole half of basketball where they're just sort of feeling out the other team and learning what it's like to play against them. Most teams, certainly previous Pitt teams, and I think a lot of teams in the ACC and a lot of teams in college basketball, if they went into halftime down 10 against that Virginia team and that Virginia defense, because they were spending the first 20 minutes sort of getting a feel for it and seeing what it's like to actually play against it, they probably wouldn't be able to come back. And that's not even, previous Pitt teams I don't think were able to come back because they had a lot of issues and chemistry and culture and didn't have the skill set to pull it off. But I just think a lot of teams would struggle in that situation. If they fell into that kind of hole, it would be very difficult for them to get themselves back out of it. This team was able to do it. And I think it's a huge credit to this team, to the coaches and to the players, particularly the players, but I think the coaches have a lot to do with this as well, with what they addressed at halftime and how they approached halftime. But it's a huge credit to these Pitt players that over the final 16 minutes of the game, they were able to not just sort of, have the resilience to keep fighting against Virginia, but to crack Virginia's defense, to really kind of break it open and start doing the things that they wanted to do and playing the way they wanted to play, because that was the biggest thing that was happening in the first half. Pitt wasn't able to do the things they wanted to do. Virginia was doing a really good job making Pitt uncomfortable. Jeff Capel used the word frantic with how they were, how Pitt's players were reacting and responding to the defense that Virginia was playing. But in the second half, they calmed down. Nelly Cummings got back in the game. Jeff Capel said that he has been sick for the past week or so. That's why he missed about 8 minutes in the first half. He played the entire second half. Played really well. Didn't have a turnover. Had eight assists. I think he scored like 6 points, but he didn't take a shot until the second half. So that's, and I think if you have 8 assists and 0 turnovers, you'll take that, particularly against that defense, which is really good. Like packing it in when you get to the paint, or really when you come across the 3-point line. And they're also really good at getting steals, which they did a lot of in the first half and really didn't do hardly any of in the second half. They were far less effective. And Pitt was able to attack that pack line defense by driving into it, causing it to collapse, and then kicking out and finding the open shooters. Because with the way Virginia plays, those shooters are there. And as Jeff Capel pointed out last night, he didn't say unlike previous Pitt teams, but the reality is unlike previous Pitt teams, they have shooters. They have guys who can knock those shots down. That if Jamarius Burton drives into the lane and he's got 2 guys on him or 3 guys on him, first of all, if he's only got 1 guy on him, he's going to go for the basket. If he's got 2 guys on him or 3 guys on him, then that means somebody's out there. Nelly Cummings is out there. Blake Hinson is out there. Greg Elliott is out there. One of those guys is going to be out there and available for an outlet pass and a quick trigger shot at a 3. That's who this team is right now. That's what this team does well. And they're doing it more and more consistently. And those early season struggles, the West Virginia game, the Michigan game, the VCU game, they keep feeling further and further in the rearview mirror. Because this team keeps growing and growing together and getting better together and looking more and more like a legitimate threat in the ACC. What that means and what that'll translate to and where they'll end up, I have no idea. But I know that right now they're 11-4. Overall, they're 4-0 in the ACC. And they look like a team that can play with just about anybody in the conference, on a night-to-night basis. They'll have losses. They'll have games where the shots don't fall and they just can't quite do enough to overcome a deficit. But more and more, it's looking like they're going to win a bunch of games here. And it's the conversation's going to shift in the not-too-distant future. Maybe after the Clemson game on Saturday, the conversation's going to shift to how many games is this team actually capable of winning? Because you're going to start talking double digits. I mean, quite frankly, at this point, they're 4-0 now. If they end up winning 12, which I think if they go 12-8 in the ACC, you'd be like, wow, that's a real improvement over previous years. That means they go 8-8 over the next 16 games. This team feels like it should be better than 500 over the next 16 games. Over a sample size of that big, that many games, they should do better than 500. They should do better than 8-8. Now, Jeff Capel pretty much played 6 guys in the second half last night. He's going to need the rotation to somehow fill out a little bit. And I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if that comes from more minutes for Jorge Diaz-Graham. I guess part of it is waiting for John Hughley to come back, which I presume will happen at some point. But, you're going to need to stretch it out a little bit. Now, they've also played North Carolina and Virginia in back-to-back games. There's some teams at the bottom of the conference that when they face those teams, they might be able to, they should be able to extend the rotation a little bit more than what they had to do to beat Virginia. But for now, it's all good because it's leading to victories and it's working out. And they're off to as good a start as anybody in the conference aside from Miami. This is really kind of how it feels at this point. And they look like a team that can hang with just about anybody. Which makes things very, very interesting. And I'm really interested to see what the crowd is going to look like on Saturday. That's a 4 o'clock tip-off. I mean, I assume the students will be back in town by then. It should be a good crowd. I mean, this should be one of the better crowds we've seen in quite some time because there's legitimately something to get, interested in. This team should very much have your interest, your curiosity, and your attention. I know I'm looking forward to seeing what they do on Saturday. Should be interesting. Should be interesting because that's what this team has shown itself to be. Very interesting. So thanks for tuning in. Like I say, it was a late night last night, but we are here bright and early for you with the Morning Pitt. As Pitt basketball just keeps sucking you in. See what they can do. So like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com while you are here. And we will keep pumping these out Monday through Friday, every day. We've got a really good one coming tomorrow, so I definitely look forward to that. Before that, we will be live tonight at 8:30 for the Panther-Lair show right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you tune in for a live conversation of all things going on in Pitt sports, football, basketball, recruiting, everything going on. We'll be talking about it tonight on the Panther-Lair show, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So thanks for checking this out today. Hope you've had a good week so far. Hope you have a good Wednesday. We'll talk to you tonight on the live stream, and then we'll be back right here tomorrow morning for the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.